Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to our wisdom, the nectar from senior devotee experiencing Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of ISKCON. Today we have very special guest, Her Grace Urmila Devi Dasi, the direct disciple of His Divine Grace S.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So it is our great fortune and we are honored she's here. So please accept my humble obeisance and all glories to Srila Prabhupada. And she's doing a lot of stuff in International Society for Krishna and outside also for devotee and also non-devotee. Big project going on. And today, Srila Prabhupada is very extraordinary personality. He came outside of India. The only purpose to helping people for material world to transfer to the spiritual link, connect to the Supreme Lord Krishna and his merciful way. And now his direct disciple also doing same things worldwide with ISKCON. Every city have ISKCON societies. And today our national guest, and I humbly request Dipeshwari Radhika Devi Dasi to read her biography. So please now Dipeshwari Radhika Devi Dasi.
Hare Krishna, Madam Urmila Devi Dasi and Mahalakshmi Devi Dasi. Please accept my humble obeisance to both of you. All grace to Srila Prabhupada, all grace to Guru and Gauranga. Dandavat Pranam. It is an honor to read this biography of our guest speaker, Her Grace Urmila Devi Dasi. Her Grace an American educator. She joined the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in 1973 in Chicago and became a disciple of S.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder of ISKCON. In 1996, she entered the renounced ashram of Banaprastha. Her primary work in ISKCON has been in the area of education in 1982 in Detroit. She and her husband started ISKCON's first day school, where she served as principal for 8 years. She and her husband also founded a kindergarten to grade 12 school in North Carolina in 1990, where she was the principal for 10 years. She taught children in nursery school, elementary, and high school for a total of 27 years. Her Grace Urmila Devi Dashi has compiled a guidebook for education in ISKCON and has been engaged in writing and coordinating the development of a Krishna conscious academic curriculum for primary and secondary students. Her Grace Urmila Devi Dashi has a Master's of School Administration and a Doctor of Education in Educational Leadership from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She teaches some courses such as ISKCON History, Sociology of Religion, and Educational Research at Bhaktivedanta College in Radhadesh, Belgium. She is also the chair of the Shastric Advisory Council to the Governing Body Commission of ISKCON. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dipeshwari Radhika Devi Dasi, for experiencing this biography, this wonderful biography, and also today our few guests also here present, so it is nice. And Urmila Devi Prabhu also direct disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada mission is going on whole of the world. For even Srila Prabhupada is directly not present in this world, but his disciple and senior devotee carry on his message to whole world, and people are taking advantage to reading his book and his all disciples the nectar, and this way they proceed for Krishna consciousness. This wonderful project whole world can save by chanting the Maha Mantra Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram Hare Hare. So I request our special guest to start his piece with experience Srila Prabhupada, and today's topic the stage of meditation, and finally we have question and answer. So
When
thank
did you
you.
want me to talk about the project? At the
You
beginning or the end?
project. Yeah, you can start with how you comfortable with project and touch with Srila Prabhupada, how you get great mercy from Srila Prabhupada also.
Getting mercy from Srila Prabhupada. That's
Yeah.
so. Not quite sure how to share screen. Okay. So I was requested to share a little bit about this project that I support.
Okay.
This is, you can see more about it at radharani.com. And this is where we are feeding about 250 widows every day. Plus we
Oh,
are
wonderful.
empowering them in cleaning the Dham.
Mm-hmm.
And we are restoring many of the holy places around Govardhan and Radhakund and Shamakund.
Wonderful.
So you can find out more about this at radharani.com and see the work that is being done there. We are cleaning, we are providing meals, we are taking care of the widows, we are restoring the holy places. And many of the holy places we have restored in the area. If you want to also, you can access this site. I'll show you another place you can access if you want information. So if you're on Facebook and you go to Radha Seva, the Radha Seva page, and we have at radharani.com, and also the Radha Seva page gives you all information. Okay. So, Sachipan Gauranga Prabhu asked me to share that with you.
Yeah.
This is a very satisfying service for Srila Prabhupada. One of the 7 purposes of ISKCON is to establish a holy place. And of course, this is already a holy place. So this is taking care of the holy place. All right, so we are now go on to our topic. I don't know why it's not. Okay. So I'm used to using Zoom, and this is a little different. So sometimes it takes me a couple minutes to figure out how to do this. Okay, particular window, there we go. Okay, so these stages of meditation are mostly described by Srila Prabhupada in his purport to the Nectar of Instruction, which is, of course, from the Upadeshamrita, text 8, where Srila Prabhupada is making a direct quote from the commentary of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Srila Prabhupada also describes these stages of meditation elsewhere. He describes them, just part of them, in the 7th canto, where Prahlad Maharaj talks about Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam to Hiranyakashipu. And when Srila Prabhupada is discussing Smaranam in that purport, he also discusses the 5 steps of the 3rd stage. The stages of meditation are also discussed by Jiva Goswami. I'm pretty sure it's in the Bhakti Sandarbha. And they're also discussed by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his commentary to Raghunath Das Goswami Sri Manashiksha, text 11. They're discussed by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jaiva Dharma, and they're discussed by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Harinam Chintamani. So there's a number of different places where these are discussed. Our godbrother Shivaram Swami has brought together a number of these descriptions into his book, Sudha Bhakti Chintamani. And we might note that these stages are explained a little differently in each place. So it may seem that these stages of meditation are similar to Astanga Yoga, because there are some of the descriptions like Dharana and Dhyana and Samadhi, which are also used in Astanga Yoga. However, we should very clearly state that in Astanga Yoga, the stages of meditation are mechanical. They involve using the human body and the human mind, yantra, as a machine. So the human body and the human mind are a machine that is very suitable for meditation, unlike the bodies and minds given to the animals and the plants. You know, the dogs and the sparrows and the trees, they don't have a body that's suitable for meditation and liberation. It's possible by the mercy of a devotee, but it is not generally the way that their machine is conducted. So Astanga Yoga is moving the life air and situating the mind in such a way to go into a kind of mechanical samadhi. So the samadhi and the meditation of the bhakti yogi is different. It's not a mechanical process, although certainly some of the same pathways that open in the mechanical process would be opened by the bhakti yogi. But in bhakti, we are not using a mechanical process at all. Even though we are doing sadhana, whether we're doing Vaidhi sadhana or Raganuga sadhana, we're doing sadhana, we're doing a deliberate practice, but it is not mechanical. So the analogy given by Rupa Goswami and that Srila Prabhupada explains in the Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu and the Nectar of Devotion is that of a little child learning how to walk. So walking is it sounds like you have to mute some people, whoever is the host. There's some people that we're getting a lot of noise from them and that they need to be muted. I can't do that. I can only see my screen. I can't see anything else. So walking is natural in a human body. As soon as a child is born, like immediately when a child is born, one of the tests they do for what's called the Apgar score is they hold up the newborn baby, and part of to tell if the newborn baby's neurological systems are functioning properly is the newborn baby will naturally, when you hold them straight up, they will try to put one foot in front of another. They will try to walk. So you can teach a dog how to walk on 2 feet or an elephant how to walk on 2 feet, but that is not natural for them. So you could teach a dog by practice how to walk on 2 feet, but it is artificial. Or if you can teach someone how to do, say, ballet steps, but that is artificial. In fact, to learn ballet properly, you have to start when you're very young, because you have to start before the bones go into their fully natural position. Because ballet involves putting the body into some unnatural positions that it will not take in the normal human development. So Srila Prabhupada makes the point, Rupa Goswami makes the point, and Prabhupada reiterates it, that bhakti is not practicing something artificial like that. That what bhakti is doing is it's taking something that is natural to the soul, and the sadhana process is to reawaken what is natural. So just like the little child, they stand up holding onto something, or they're pushing something and walking, pushing something, and they are focusing on this practice. So you can say it's deliberate, or Krishna's using the word abhyas yoga in the 12th chapter. If you're repeating something deliberately, you have to make an effort, just like the little child has to make an effort to learn to walk. At the same time, the effort is to awaken that which is natural. And in many ways, we can say that the deliberate practice being done in sadhana bhakti is primarily to attract the mercy of the Lord, to show the Lord that we are sincere in wanting his love, and to ask him to be merciful and to help us awaken. So this is a very important point to consider as we go through these stages. So the first stage of meditation in Bhakti Yoga is hearing, Shravanadhasa. So we may say, well, I thought Shravana was one stage and Smarana is another kind, of the angas of Bhakti. We talk about hearing, chanting, remembering. So we could say that this hearing, that's one anga, and Smaranam, remembering or meditation, is another anga. But here we're looking at the anga of smarana. We're looking at the anga of remembering and meditation. And within that anga, a particular type of Shravana Dhasa is the first step. So this is Shravana in a meditative way. In a meditative way. So let's say we are hearing philosophy. We are hearing some philosophy. Maya dakshena prakriti suyate saturacham hetuna nenu konteya jagadvi paravatite. That all the living entities, characharam, those that move, like the birds, and those that don't move, like the trees, that these are all coming from Krishna's energy, and that Krishna is the source of everything. So this is some philosophy. But when we hear this philosophy, we meditate on what we hear. Many times if someone is hearing something philosophical, their purpose, or some knowledge, their purpose is to become knowledgeable. So there is some mental gratification. The mind is one of these senses. The mind is considered the sixth sense. So we all get some mental satisfaction from knowing something, from learning something. Oh, now I know something. Or maybe to be able to explain to someone something that we know. So this gives us a sense of mental sense gratification. It gives us a sense of false ego that we know something or we can explain something. And we may study philosophy with that mood. But that is not the mood. When we study this philosophy, the idea should be to meditate deeply on the person Krishna. To meditate deeply. So maya dakshena prakriti suyate saturacham hetuna nenu konteya jagadvi parivatite. So we can meditate on how everything that's moving and non-moving, just like Srila Prabhupada, right before he left this world, and he was still translating and purporting the Bhagavatam. So if you've seen that video, Prabhupada at the very end is saying, everything is moving and acting by the supreme direction of Krishna. So when we read a verse like this of philosophy, we can meditate. We go to a kind of meditation. Everything is moving. All moving beings, all non-moving beings, they're all acting under the direction of Krishna and Krishna's energies. How wonderful he is. Just like with some ordinary person, if we see some ordinary person is managing some big country, some big government, or some big business, or anything, just like yesterday we went to the Rath Yatra in New York, and so there's somebody managing this, right? There's just like there's someone in charge of the Festival of India, Madhuha Prabhu, and he's managing it. And then there's some devotee in the New York temple who is also managing this particular event, you know, securing the venue and working with the police and all of the vendors. And, you know, somebody is managing, and we're in awe. You know, we look at this big, complicated festival and we're like, wow, this is so amazing. Who is doing this? So we get some appreciation for the individual. We may feel some affection, some appreciation for the individual. So we read these verses of Krishna about philosophy of Krishna, and we get some appreciation for the individual. Or like a few days ago, I was reading in the 8th canto, Lord Shiva is speaking to his wife about the glories of the Lord. And he's saying, he for whom time has no entrance. So I was meditating on this. We were at the Rath Yatra, as I said yesterday. So I'm seeing some of my god brothers and god sisters. So we are all now our bodies are old. You know, some of my god brothers, their skin is so wrinkled. You know, their skin looks like a raisin. And one of my god brothers, he's there with his cane. I said, oh, you were using a cane. So a time has entrance, and old age is not attractive. Youth is very attractive, right? Even if somebody is not physically proportioned very nicely, when someone is young, they are attractive. The energy, the exuberance, the idealism, even the passion of youth, it's very attractive. So we read this philosophy. Krishna is the one where time has no entrance. And we can use this philosophical statement to meditate on Krishna is Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha. He's always youthful. He's always fresh. In Vrindavan, he's only like 15, 16. Just the verge of youth. Verge of youth. Just youthful. Right? Even the other day I was taking to a frame shop this one painting of Krishna. And so the people there at the frame shop, they were writing down a description, and they said, oh, a woman in a garden. I said, no, it's not a woman, it's a man. But because Krishna is this very youthful, so just like a boy in this world, 15, 16, has not yet displayed a lot of the masculine facial features, right? So men, their jaw becomes more prominent than a woman. The bones above the eyes, the eyebrow bones becomes more prominent. They get facial hair. So as soon as you see a face of a person, generally, most of the time, one can tell if the person is male or female by the bone structure of the face, by the facial hair. So, but this happens a little later. It doesn't usually happen at like 15, 16. So Krishna is on this verge of youth. He's very youthful, like a young boy. Navayovanam Cha. And this is very, very attractive. So my point is, when we hear this philosophy that the Lord, for whom time has no entrance, and then we meditate on Krishna, not just in a philosophical way. Like Srila Prabhupada told my father in 1974, he said, any religion that is bona fide means that you know God and love him. So we are getting to know God so that we can become attached to him. And this is what Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita 12:9, when he says the purpose of Abhyas Yoga, or the purpose of sadhana bhakti, is to develop ichha, to develop a desire. The purpose is not to become a philosopher. The purpose is not to check off a box. Now I have heard, I have been to class, I have read my piece of the Shastra. The purpose is to get this ichha, to fall in love with Krishna. And why is this the first stage of meditation? Because we will always meditate on what we are attached to. So we talked about philosophy, and then there's also lila. So the Shastra is full of philosophy about Krishna, and the Shastra is also full of Leela of Krishna and Leelas of Krishna's devotees. And of course, one cannot make some absolute separation. The Leela contains philosophy, the philosophy contains Leela. They are very interrelated. We find Srila Prabhupada, whenever he would talk Leela, it was interspersed with philosophy, and he would intersperse philosophy with Leela and Leela with philosophy. Although we do have some of the works of our acharyas that are just strictly philosophical works, and some of the works of our acharyas that are strictly Leela works. But the Leela also, we are not studying the Leela in order to memorize a plot. We're not studying the Leela so we can say, oh, first this happens and then this happens. Often there's different accounts of the same Leela where the plots or the chronology is different in different accounts. We're just reading in the Bhagavatam how Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill when he was 7. And in his commentary, Sanatana Goswami says that the Vishnu Purana explains that Krishna lifted the hill when he was 8. So we are not so concerned with these. I mean, he gives some explanation. Sanatana Goswami gives some explanation. But the Leelas are not so much about plot and chronology. Just like there was one point where the devotees were engaging the children in a trivia game about Krishna book. And Prabhupada said, should stop this. This is not the purpose of study. When we are hearing Leela, we want to meditate on the emotions, the bhavas. You have Rupa Goswami is explaining there's the sthai bhav, that's like servitude, friendship, parental joy, wonder. There's the vibhavs, which is like Krishna as the shelter, the devotee as the repository, and Krishna's flute, Krishna's beauty. You have the anubhavs, all the transitory emotions. You have the sattvika bhavs, which are the anubhavs, I'm sorry, are the expression of devotion, the intentional expression of devotion. The sattvika bhavs, the involuntary expressions of devotion, like crying, and the vyavichari bhavs, which are the different emotions that move through the sthai bhav. So there's all of these bhavs that make up rasa. These 5 bhavas make up rasa. And when we are hearing or reading the Leela, our meditation should be on what are these bhavas. How is Mother Yasoda feeling? How is Nandamarsh feeling? How is Subal feeling? How are Krishna and Balaram feeling? How is Radharani and Lalita feeling? How are the trees feeling? How are the clouds feeling? Like the gopis twice, they describe the clouds as Krishna's friend. So in this way, Shravana Das is the first stage of meditation. Whether we are hearing philosophy or whether we are hearing Leela or whether we are hearing some combination of these, we hear with meditation. We hear with a mood of meditating. We hear with a mood of really imbibing, getting to know Krishna in order to fall in love with him. So the second stage is called Varanadasha. So Varanadasha is when by hearing, we start to accept. Varna means to accept. That we start to really accept. It starts to become part of us. By hearing in a meditative way, by hearing in a way of trying to enter into this attachment to Krishna and enter into these various bhavs that make up rasa, we start to internalize what we are hearing. So we illustrate this, how Krishna manifests in the Shastra. That we say the Bhagavatam is the incarnation of Krishna. And one starts to accept that. Not in a theoretical, theological, philosophical construct, not as a concept, but one really accepts that in one's life. That the holy name is Krishna, that the Shastra is Krishna, that when we are hearing the kirtan, when we are hearing philosophy, when we are hearing Leela, that it actually is Krishna. It starts to become a part of us, starts to become a part of our life. So this is the second stage of meditation. Then we have the third stage of meditation is called Smaranavasta. So once we've started really to accept what we've heard, once it starts to become a part of us, then we are able to begin, although those two stages are also stages of smarana. They are also stages of remembrance and meditation in Bhakti Yoga. But now we are really going deep into smarana. Now, this smarana has 5 subparts. As I mentioned in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, in this Prabhupada's purport to Prahlad Maharaj's verse on the 9 processes of bhakti, Srila Prabhupada only describes these 5 subparts of the third stage. Right? And we want to emphasize that in the first stage of hearing, smaranavasa, the second stage of accepting vadanadasa, and this third stage of smaranavasta, this is all happening on the platform of the mind. This is all happening on the platform of the mind, using the mind. Now, I have very frequently encountered devotees who are very shy or hesitant or even frightened of using their mind in remembering Krishna. Now, this is very interesting because Krishna says, Manmana bhava mad bhakto. Manmana. Mana means mind. So use your mind to think of me. And of course, Rupa Goswami explains that sadhana bhakti begins, the beginning of sadhana bhakti is when one tries to always remember Krishna and never forget him. Now, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, notes that for the neophyte, you cannot have a practice to always remember Krishna because they will fail and they'll get discouraged. But at least there's some time of the day when chanting japa, when chanting the Gayatri, when doing worship, when reading the Shastra, where one is remembering Krishna using the mind. And Krishna also says in the beginning of the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Maya Shakta Mana Partha. So again, Maya Shakta with attachment, Mana, mind. I use the mind. Okay. So now we have the first part of the third stage. So in this first part of the third stage, one is remembering Krishna using the mind, and this is, we're in sadhana bhakti, we're talking about deliberately. So we're taking what we've heard and what we've accepted, and we are making a deliberate effort to remember that, to recollect it, but it's interrupted. So we have a picture here of somebody with beads and a phone. You know, they're chanting and then they're looking at their phone. It's interrupted. So you start to remember something about Krishna, and then you remember something else, and then you try to remember something about Krishna, and then you remember something else. It keeps being interrupted. It's at a fairly superficial level, and it keeps starting and stopping. It keeps starting and stopping. The mind keeps getting distracted. If we want to think about the stages from Shraddha to Prema, so in his Madhurya Kadambini by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he explains, interestingly enough, that even at the stage of Nishta, sta means to stay, means to be stable. So even when the body, mind, and words are all stable in bhakti, half of the anartas are finished, and one may already have some realization of one's eternal relationship with Krishna as a cowherd boy or as a gopi, etc., that the mind still has a tendency to go to material subject matter. You can think of it like a car or a bicycle where the wheels are a little crooked, and so it has a tendency to swerve to one side, and you have to keep correcting. So in Nishta and even Ruchi, the mind tends to go to another place, and one keeps bringing it back. It's interrupted. As Krishna says in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, from wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must constantly withdraw it and fix it on the self. So this is this interrupted. Then in third stage, part 2, this is called absorption or uninterrupted, but it's fairly superficial. This is not a deep absorption. So at this stage, one starts thinking about Krishna, and it leads to another thought about Krishna, and it leads to another thought about Krishna. So our mind is actually very expert at this kind of thing. If you think about a conversation that you've had with someone, if you can remember the last time you had a conversation with someone, you'll find you'll start talking about something, and that leads you to talking about something else, which leads you to talking about something else. It's kind of like a tree with many branches. You start talking and you go to this topic and this topic. And in our internal thoughts, it's also like that, right? That we think about something and that leads us to think about something. That leads us to think. It's like a chain. Yes? So our mind, as I said, is very good at this. And when we are applying this to our thinking about the things we have heard and accepted about Krishna, so we start thinking, oh, Krishna's lotus feet, they are so soft and they have tulsi leaves on them. And yes, when Krishna's walking in the forest, so the other animals and the people in Vrindavan, they walk around his footprints so they don't obliterate them. And therefore, when Krishna was in the coils of Kaliya, everybody could follow his footprints to the lake. Oh, but then they were so sad when Krishna was in Kaliya. They were so worried about him. But they were also very sad when Krishna was going to Mathura. And they were worrying, how is Krishna going to be happy outside of Vrindavan? And that's because, in one sense, Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. Oh, but then Uddhava came to Vrindavan to give the message. So one starts going from one pastime to another, or one can be uninterrupted in the Astakalila Lila. We will notice that these stages of meditation are in the purport to Nectar of Instruction, text 8, which is where Prabhupada has this translation about the Astakalila Lila. So this uninterrupted can also mean that one remembers pastime that Krishna has at one time of the day, and then one is remembering, oh, Krishna goes to the forest with the cowherd boys in the late morning. Oh, after that, one remembers how Krishna is playing games with the gopis in the middle of the day, and then one remembers how Krishna is going back to the village in the afternoon, and like that. So one remembers the cycle during the day. Now, it's very interesting for this kind of smarana. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has given us some hint in his book Bhajana Rahasya. In Bhajana Rahasya, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur takes the 16 words of the Mahamantra and divides them into 8 groups of 2 words each. So Hare Krishna is one group, then Hare Krishna is another group, then Krishna Krishna is another group, like that. And so you have 8 groups, and then there are 8 times of the day, 8 times of Krishna's day, Krishna's revolving pastimes. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur identifies these 8 groups of 2 words with this 8 times of the day. So that I don't think this is very possible in japa, but in kirtan, it is certainly possible that for each pair of words, one can be meditating on these 8 parts of the day. So this is a kind of uninterrupted. But we want to emphasize that this is not a deep meditation. It's still somewhat superficial. Okay, now part 3. Here it becomes concentrated, and we talked about how everything through the 3rd stage is on the platform of the mind. And we like to reference Bhagavatam 3:28-34. Bhagavatam 3:28-34. This is Lord Kapila, 3:28-34, where Lord Kapila says, the mind is used as a means to attract the Lord as one attracts a fish to a hook. So here the mind is more concentrated. So this flow of thinking starts going to a deeper level. And again, we may question, why are we just using the mind? I think one of the main questions people have of using the mind is we may be imagining something that is not spiritually correct. Now, I want everybody to remember that the first stage of meditation is hearing. So everything that we're meditating on here in stage 3 is based on what we have heard from Shastra and from our Acharyas. That is another reason why we have hearing first. So we are not concocting anything. But you might say, well, even then, I am hearing from the scriptures or from the acharyas, but I may be imagining something of what it is like. So there was a lecture Srila Prabhupada gave in Geneva, Switzerland, where he said chanting Hare Krishna means that one imagines. Prabhupada used the word imagine. One imagines that in my heart, I have made a diamond throne for Krishna. I am seating him on the throne. I may be not getting the words exactly right. I am bathing him with Ganga and Yamuna water. I am dressing him. I am ornamenting him, and so forth. And Prabhupada says at least twice in that regard, he says, this is not false, it is real. It is not false, it is real. Of course, we have the example given by Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that Prabhupada gives in the Nectar of Devotion of the Brahmana who was meditating on bathing the Lord using golden pots of Ganga water and Yamuna water and so forth and so on. And Prabhupada's related this to a meditation we can do while chanting Hare Krishna. So Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami, in his Bhakti Sandarbha, he says that the Lord enters the consciousness on the path of our meditation. So as we concentrate our mind on this uninterrupted flow of meditation, that attracts the Lord. We can understand this just like if someone's thinking of me, I'm attracted in a positive way, then I am attracted to visit them. So if we are thinking of Krishna in a positive way, he is attracted to visit us. And if there's some mistake in our meditation because it's on the platform of the mind, Krishna will rectify it. Okay, part 4, Anusmriti. This is when the concentrated becomes an uninterrupted flow. So again, we had the first stage was superficial and interrupted, then it becomes superficial and interrupted, then it becomes superficial and uninterrupted, then it starts going deep. Now it's deep and uninterrupted. Now this deep and uninterrupted particularly means that the meditation is flowing out of our designated meditation time into the rest of our life. So generally, as we were saying earlier, that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu on Rupa Goswami saying that one should always remember Krishna and never forget him, he said that for the neophyte, this means that during certain times of the day or certain times of the month and the year, during certain designated activities, we are just thinking about Krishna. So we sit down to chant japa, we sit down to chant Gayatri, we are worshiping the deity, we are reading the Shastra. During that time, we are always remembering Krishna. And then as we go to do things, and it may be even cooking in the kitchen for Krishna or going out and selling books or working at our job or taking care of our family, we may keep forgetting Krishna. So, but at this point in the third stage, part 4, the meditation that is happening during our sadhana time is flowing into our life. So we are remembering Krishna while we are driving. We are remembering Krishna while we are cleaning. We are remembering Krishna while we are cooking. That it is flowing into those times. Then third stage, part 5, is a samadhi, but a samadhi of the mind. So this samadhi of the mind, so we're going from interrupted, uninterrupted, but those are both superficial, concentrated flowing, and then deeply concentrated flowing. This is samadhi. Now this is though on the platform of the mind. And again, we look at Bhagavatam 3:28-34. Now we're going to look at the purport. And Srila Prabhupada writes, when the mind forcibly is engaged upon the form of the Lord, this is called nirbija yoga or lifeless yoga. The yogi does not automatically engage in the personal service of the Lord. So this is an indicator that throughout the third stage, even through part 5, there is a deliberate effort. This is within the realm of sadhana. Now, it may be Vaidhi sadhana or Raganuga or some combination. In some of the descriptions of these meditative stages, Bhaktivinoda particularly describes them as all being on the platform of Raganuga sadhana. And then there's other places where he's describing them as being primarily on the platform of Vaidhi sadhana. So, this one can go through these stages in Vaidhi and then Raganuga. One can go through these stages just in Vaidhi. One can go through these stages in just Raganuga. That is a more detailed description. Okay, now we come to the fourth stage of meditation. This is also called samadhi. So part 5, third stage is called samadhi, but it's of the mind. And the fourth stage of meditation is also called samadhi or apanadasha. Apanadasha is where there's some level of achievement. Now, this stage of samadhi is different. This is where the Lord has become attracted. Remember, we quoted Jiva Goswami and Bhakti Sandarbha that the Lord walks the path of our meditation to enter our consciousness. So this is the point at which the Shaktis of the Lord enter the heart and illuminate the heart. So this is very nicely described by Rupa Goswami and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in Nectar of Devotion, chapter 17, on the description of bhava, how the Lord Shakti, Sandini, Samvit, Ladini Shakti enter the heart and illuminate the heart. They enter the consciousness, they enter the mind, and they illuminate the mind and the heart. So Krishna has become attracted, and this is not, it's not that the mental samadhi becomes spiritual samadhi, is that the mental samadhi attracts spiritual samadhi. And it's explained very clearly that at this point, the devotee is not using the mind. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur also explains this very nicely in his commentary on Manashiksha, verse 8, where Raghunath Das Goswami is saying that the devotee is asking to drink glowing nectar. Bhaktivinoda says that this means the rays of the Ladini Shakti enter the heart and illuminate the heart. So at this point, one has what we call spiritual television. Prabhupada would call this spiritual television. So the leelas of the Lord, the knowledge of the Lord, are being broadcast into the heart. So at this point, there's no question of mental imagination. There's no possibility of mental mistake. And now whatever flaws there were in one's mental meditation are completely eradicated. Now we should mention that these stages of meditation, they're not necessarily discrete stages, just discrete bounded stages. So even in early aspects of meditation, there's going to be some revelation by the Lord, where some mental misconception we have is cleared up by the Lord. So that's also important to note. Now, again, going to Bhagavatam 3:28-34. So the difference between the third stage of meditation, part 5, and the fourth stage of meditation, the difference between mental samadhi and spiritual samadhi, Srila Prabhupada writes, in the beginning, the mind is employed in attracting the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but in the higher stages, there is no question of using the mind. When one is constantly thinking of the Lord, that is called living yoga. So the same point is made in Nectar Devotion, chapter 17, that at this stage of bhava, or at this stage of meditation, the mind is no longer important. That one is getting this direct revelation from the Lord. And such a thing does not happen in Astanga Yoga. And in fact, all of this meditation in bhakti is on the platform of bhava. It's on the platform of emotion. It's on the platform of desire. It's not something mechanical. Now, the fifth stage, sampati dasa. Sampati is achieving. So here the Lord comes out of the heart meditation and appears face to face to the devotee. So in this fourth stage, one is in the material world, but one's consciousness is in the spiritual television, in the spiritual world. Whereas in this fifth stage, one is in the spiritual world, and one may still be maintaining one's body within the material world. So this moving from this fourth to fifth stage of meditation is nicely explained in the story of Dhruva Maharaj, where Dhruva was meditating and he was in this full samadhi of seeing the Lord in his heart. And then it said that the Lord who was in his heart just suddenly disappeared. Dhruva's meditation broke. He opened his eyes and he saw before him the same form of the Lord on which he had been meditating within the heart. And this is very nicely described by Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, also in Madhurya Kadambini. where that the meditation goes from something that is inside and one is seeing Krishna face to face. Just like Srila Prabhupada was one time speaking to a reporter, and the reporter was saying, are you getting instruction from Krishna? And Prabhupada said, yes. The reporter said, how is that? And then Rameshwar said, well, Krishna is instructing him from within his heart and from the Shastra. And Prabhupada interrupted and said, no. He says, I am directly seeing Krishna face to face. So at this point, one is fully absorbed in the Lord's pastimes in the spiritual world. One has entered into the Lord's pastimes mentally in the third stage of meditation. In the fourth stage, one is entering into them factually within the heart. In the fifth stage, one is living in those pastimes. Okay, so I'm going to use now an allegory that I personally developed to try to understand these stages. We'll review everything. So we're going to compare the first stage of meditation, hearing, to like you take some milk and you pour it into a pot. And we're going to give an analogy of the second stage of meditation, accepting, would be like you have turned on the fire under the pot. You've started to cook the milk. This third stage of meditation, where one starts really meditating, is the milk has started to cook. Now again, this third stage has 5 parts. So first part, someone needs to be muted. Third stage, part 1, is someone needs to be muted. Whoever's the host, please mute that person. So third stage, part 1, this is interrupted. So you stir your milk, and then you wash the beans, you stir your milk, and then you cut the vegetables, you stir your milk, and then you answer your phone. So interrupt. Then third stage, part 2, is you're stirring the milk all the time. It's uninterrupted. Superficial, but it's uninterrupted. You're simply stirring the milk. We should actually say, just like we could give a comparison to listening to a class. So some of you listening to this class online, it's probably a very interrupted listening. So you're listening to what I'm saying, and you're also cleaning your floor at the same time. And while you're listening to what I'm saying, you're cooking, and your awareness is going back and forth from listening to the class and doing something else. Then some of you are just listening to the class. You don't have your attention anyplace else, but it's kind of superficial. If we asked you at the end of the class what was said, you'd have to really struggle to remember. All right, so meditation stage 3, part 3 is it becomes concentrated. So now they're really focusing on their meditation. And then we have expanded. So this is concentrated and uninterrupted. So if you can think, if someone's listening to this class and they're really focusing and they're not interrupting with something else. So when our meditation on Krishna is like that, and again, this is the stage 3, part 4, is when the meditation expands out of our japa, out of our puja, out of our reading into our life. And then we have stage 3, part 5, mental samadhi. So here we have this full concentration of the milk. And then meditation stage 4. Here you see we've added sugar to the milk. So this is when the rays of the Shakti of the Lord, the Sambit, Sandini, and Ladini, they enter into the consciousness, and one gets actual spiritual television. And then 5th stage, we have our burfi. So this is like when Krishna appears and one is seeing him face to face. Okay. So we've concluded our explanation, and we have about 8 minutes. I don't know how you're arranging the questions, because this is being broadcast on, I think, Facebook and YouTube, yes?
Yes.
Both? So I don't know how
Yes.
you're arranging.
Yeah, we've been getting some questions on Facebook.
Okay, so we have about 7-8 minutes if anybody has any questions.
Yeah. So one question is come from there. Then, what is the most things attract you in the beginning of Hare Krishna movement when you join the Hare Krishna movement?
That question has nothing to do with the class.
I know, but they ask.
So actually, Prabhupada didn't so much like people asking questions that didn't have to do with the class. because he said, then we can talk unlimitedly about
Yes.
so many things, right?
Yeah.
Then he says there is no end. So I am going to direct you instead.
Okay.
I'll share another screen with you in a moment. So I have written an essay on this, and let me share my screen. So I have a website, urmiladasi.com, and there in unpublished essays, I have this story, How I Came to Krishna Consciousness.
Mhm.
So if you go to urmiladasi.com and unpublished essays, How I Came to Krishna Consciousness, so you can read that there. Okay. Is there
Another
some
question,
question about the
yeah.
class?
Another question is the mental and spiritual meditation. So how people know the mental meditation and spiritual meditation is their stage?
Well, when Krishna comes in the heart, you will know. There will not be any question. There will not. Of course, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Madhurya Kadambini, he also says the devotees may think, was that real? Did I really see Krishna? I am so fallen. How could I really see Krishna? So the devotee may have some doubt even when Krishna comes because the devotee is feeling so fallen. Uh, that is certainly true. At the same time, just like I always give the example, how do you know the difference between real fresh squeezed orange juice and orange flavored chemical drink?
Mhm.
You know, the genuine thing, it's very different. So of course, even when we are meditating using the mind, Krishna is very pleased and he gives us some reciprocation. It's not that he doesn't give, this is bhakti, it is not Astanga yoga. So we are having some reciprocation from Krishna even in the very beginning of bhakti. But when fully Krishna manifests in the heart, yes, that is that is very extraordinary thing. That is a very nice question. Thank you. Whoever asked that question. Do we have any other questions coming in?
Another ashram is so there are four ashrams. So it is need to meditation is any
There
ashram
is
or
what?
there are four ashram like
Four
grihastha.
ashrams. Yes.
So it is essential for meditation any special ashram or any stage of ashram they can do or everything.
Uh, Actually, it is said by Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada that this always thinking of Krishna and never forgetting him is meant for everybody in every varna and every ashram.
Mhm. But Grihasthashram, they have a lot of responsibility, family, their society. So how they maintain that spiritual
Well, you
meditation?
know, the brahmacharis have many responsibilities also. The brahmacharis have to study. Prabhupada says they have to study both the higher values of life and specific training for a livelihood. He says that in the second canto. The vanaprasthas, they have to do many austerities. The sannyasis, they are doing a lot of teaching. I mean, actually, in our ISKCON movement, some of our sannyasis are much busier than many of our grihastas. That is a fact. You know, someone may think like that, or when I retire from grihasta life, then I'll just be able to sit and meditate. So my suggestion is you talk to any of our renunciates in the society and ask if any of them just have time to sit and meditate all day. And you will discover that is not the case. But everybody, whether you are, we are missionaries after all. We are not Bhajananandis. But we have our sadhana time. Grihastas, brahmacharis, sannyasis, whatever you are, avadutas, or you don't know what you are. Somebody's been divorced 5 times and they don't know if they're a brahmachari or grihasta or what they are. Whatever you are, you are. But everybody is chanting 16 rounds. That is our meditation time. That is our smanana time. those of us who have Gayatri initiation, we are chanting Gayatri mantra 3 times a day. Prabhupada specifically says this Gayatri mantra time is our meditation time. Specifically says. When we are worshiping the deity, if we have our deities at home, most grahastas, they have some altar at home. Even you just have pictures. This is a meditation time. When you visit the temple, that is also meditation time. You are in the kirtan, as we were talking earlier. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he equates the Hare Krishna mantra with this meditation, specifically with the Astakalila Lila meditation, and this purport is coming from that. So, and when we are hearing like a class like this, or we are hearing anything from the Shastra, that is also a meditation time. So grahastas also have this meditation time. It's not only the brahmacharis. Now you've disappeared, and I wonder if now the session is over.
No,
There you are. Now you are back. Look at that. Magic trick. So everybody, what we call in ISKCON our sadhana. I have to do my sadhana. All right, well, we say like that. I have to do my sadhana. That is our meditation time. Now you become mute. Your mouth is moving and no sound is coming.
Yeah, there's few questions there, but I'm not coming for this question because outside of this topic.
Okay,
so
thank you. Thank you. And we've gone
So
for
now-
1 hour now.
Yeah,
So
okay,
just if
continue
there's,
to-
Mahalakshmi asked me privately. So if there's any other question on the topic you are getting?
Maha Lakshmi,
She can ask me separately.
she can ask questions, so this way I can
No, that's
know.
all right. Let her ask me separately. So is there anyone else
So
who is
I
asking something?
just check it out.
She's asking me questions all the time, so don't worry.
Okay, that's good. Asking question is good.
She is very good. She's taking Bhagavad, she's Tadvidi Pranipratsena Prashnena Sevya. She's taking very seriously. It's very
Okay, so another question. In the beginner, how they meditate, what is the process to meditate in the beginning stage of
the beginning stage, your process of meditation is hearing.
hearing?
First stage is hearing. So when we hear, as I was saying in the beginning, maybe that person came late. So in the beginning, when we're hearing, whether we are hearing philosophy or whether we are hearing lila or some combination, we should be hearing with the idea of falling in love with Krishna. Because our meditation is on the basis of attachment. Our meditation is not mechanical. Just like in this world, materially, we are meditating on people and situations to which we are attached. Everybody. You know, who are we meditating on? We're meditating on some situation or some person that we have some attachment, or sometimes aversion. Sometimes we're meditating on the people we hate, right? Or we're meditating on what we're afraid of. Just like with this pandemic, some people, they are meditating on that they hate vaccines, right? I have some friend, every day she's sending me something. Vaccines are evil. Instead of sending me something about Krishna, she's every day sending this. So, you know, we naturally meditate on something where there's some emotional connection. So the beginning of meditation is starting to establish an emotional connection with Krishna. That's what bhakti is about, devotional service. So the beginning of meditation is to start awakening some devotion, and we awaken devotion by hearing. So that is how we begin. We begin to hear with devotion. We begin to hear with emotion. We begin to hear with desire, not just as a ritual and not just mechanical. All right, I think we should end now. We've gone over an hour. So
Yeah, maybe last question.
we have one last question. Okay.
Yeah, last question is, what is the advice of the new generation in
Sorry?
what your advice in the new generation in Hare Krishna movement?
My advice to the new generation of the Hare Krishna movement is remember that we are not a ritualistic religion, and we are not we're not just a culture, but we are a transcendent process for reawakening our dormant love for Krishna. That's the point. That is the point, to always hold on that and to give that love to others, to awaken that dormant love for Krishna and others. Everything else is subservient to that.
Thank you so much for your wonderful philosophical talk. It is very useful for everybody, and meditation
Thank
is
you
very
for
important.
inviting me and asking for this topic. Most
And
appreciated.
also, thank you for other who are joined directly in here and outside. Also, many in Facebook and YouTube, and they have a lot of questions, and you're not allowed to this in because people asking different type of questions. So
Well,
we
then
are
if you
concentrated.
want to do that kind of thing, then we can schedule like just an open question and answer session
Mhm. Yeah.
where instead of my giving a class on a topic, we
Mhm.
just have open Q&A and anybody can ask anything. So that's
Mhm.
sometimes we can
Definitely.
do that kind of format also.
Okay.
All right?
Okay. Thank you so much for everything. And
Hare
Srila,
Krishna.
all glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories
Oh,
to
glories
Srila
to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Thank
Hare
you,
Krishna.
everyone.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your presence. Thank you, Harkesh. Thank you, everyone.